way that I try to see the wisdom in it. And to me, it's sort of you take something away from people, and all of a sudden they learn a lot about themselves and what they had and what they need to do to make that work. And I think that that's very much a case for Crosby and Malkin on the power play. Take them off the power play with each other for a while. Have them try out different things, put them in a different environment, and then all of a sudden put them back together and see if you can recreate that old magic that clearly wasn't working at that time. That's kind of the wisdom that I saw in it. Did you see it as a permanent move in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I think it was very much the case where Mike wasn't going to leave them separated for long. I think he just said, all right, that's enough. You guys need to each kind of find your game on the power play a little bit. Maybe you can do it separately. Mm-hmm. And I see the wisdom in it. I've never been a fan of splitting those two on the power play in general. And trust me, Mike Johnson and Rick Tocchet don't want that either. If the opposition only has four guys on the ice and you have Crosby and Malkin, well, of course you want them out there against that. That only makes sense. So, yeah, I think basically it was done as a little wake-up call to those two guys. I don't think either one of them particularly liked it. Obviously, they want to play with the other guy when they're on the power play. But, yeah, it only lasted a couple of games, and we saw them back together. But I don't blame Mike Johnson for it. I actually, in retrospect, kind of like what he did. I think it was done to kind of get them to snap out of it a little bit and then sharpen their habits on the power play. And I think they've done that. And all of a sudden, that power play looks kind of lethal again, doesn't it? And by the way, what a difference Patrick Hornqvist makes when he's playing well. I think he's way better in front of the net than Chris Kunitz at this stage of his career. And if you're going to put both of them out there, that's fine. But Hornqvist, boy, what a difference maker this guy is. I find that when the Penguins have been at their best this season, Patrick Hornqvist has been at his best.
The goal he scored against Florida the other night on the backhand, picking up his own rebound right in front of the goal. I mean, that happened bang, bang. It was so quick. And he had to change from his forehand to his backhand and change his body position to make that happen. And that's all the garbage goals right in front of the net. I mean, that's as pretty as a garbage goal as you're going to see right there. And that's what Patrick Hornqvist brings. And whereas Chris Kunitz is I mean, he's been great in front of the net. He's shown his promise. But when he's at his best, he's getting pucks to bounce off of his body into the goal. And only about half of them count.
Well, that's right. And, Kunitz, he's not the player he was a couple of years ago. I think that is pretty evident when you watch Chris play. I think he's 35 now. Not a big man at all. He's even smaller in person than he looks on the ice. I was watching him the other day with standing beside Pascal Dupuis. Like, Dupuis just towers over him. He's so much bigger of a guy, and Kunitz plays a really physical, hard style. And, it only makes sense that at 35 he would start to wear down a little bit. And I think that's what we're seeing. And that doesn't mean that he can't still be an effective player, but he's starting to hit the downside of his career clearly. And Hornqvist is just a real technician in front of the net. He's not a guy who can really create much offense on his own. You're not going to see him beat the defenseman and score highlight reel goals. That's not his game. But he does have a really nifty way about him in front of the net. He's terrific just at positioning his body and getting in front of shots and collecting rebounds. He just has a real feel for it. Not everybody does. And now he's just, to me, a great weapon on the power play. And why on earth Crosby and Hornqvist were split for so long, I couldn't tell you. I guess because Crosby likes playing with Kunitz, which he does. But I actually have an article on him in tomorrow's Trib. And Crosby entered this season averaging 1.4 points per game in his career. And when he plays with Patrick Hornqvist's line this season, he's at 1.4 points per game. When he's not on Patrick Hornqvist's line, he's at 0.79 points per game. That's an enormous difference. And the other power play has something to do with that, of course. But he has been a far more productive player when he plays with Hornqvist.
Crosby very much does like playing with Chris Kunitz, and he's shown that through history. So does Evgeny Malkin. However, this season, things, as we say, have not gone Chris Kunitz's way. Has there been a little bit of a change in the timbre of that relationship?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure Kunitz would prefer to be with Crosby. You always kind of get that sense. And these guys played together in the Olympics. They played together on the Stanley Cup team. They played together during Crosby's most productive season. So, yeah, of course, they like playing together. But I think Johnson's making a smart move. And I'll tell you one thing I think about this. Crosby and Hornquist, like I said, have been really good together. And also, Kunitz isn't the same player anymore. And I find, Crosby and Malkin have many different strengths. I find Malkin actually elevates his line mates more than Crosby does. So if you take kind of an ordinary player, I find Malkin can make him much better. Exhibit A, Blake Como. Whereas Crosby is really a little pickier and has to play with certain players. There's not really a knock on Sid, but I just think Gino, he has, I don't want to make this comparison, but he has a little bit of that Gretzky and Lemieux gene where he can, take a kind of a no-name forward and make him a 20-goal scorer. I always think that's been more of a strength of his. So I think at this stage he may get more out of Kunitz than Crosby would have anyway.
We're about 6 days from the trade deadline, almost to the hour. What is Jim Rutherford's approach towards this trade line going to be? Does he go into the week thinking of ways to turn this year's team into a contender, or is he looking to build more for the next 2-3 years, like some teams would?
Well, you can't do both. That's the problem. I think he'll be more aggressive in terms of his team. He's already given up his first-round pick, so he doesn't have much more in the way of picks to give up. But no, Jim came here to win a Stanley Cup, and he's going to keep trying to do that. As for who they might target, I think ideally Jim would like one more forward and one more defenseman, preferably a top four guy to play with Ehrhoff. But boy, that's tough to do. That's asking an awful lot. You're going to hear the name Andre Sekera, who Jim obviously knows very well from Carolina. I think he's a guy the Penguins are interested in. Petrie and Edmonton is another guy I think they could be interested in. Yuri Talusti's name's popped up a couple of times, forward from Carolina. Obviously, Rutherford knows those guys especially well. So are all those guys possibilities? Yeah, they are. And I have to mention Yager Watch, of course, because, we've been talking for almost an hour, and we haven't hit on Yager Watch.
I don't know
I don't think that's I don't think it's likely the Yager's coming to Pittsburgh, but I don't think it's impossible either. Jim wants to, get one more big offensive-minded forward, and that's certainly something that Yager still is. I think Malkin would like playing with Yager. It wouldn't be an easy trade to make for financial reasons, but it's not impossible. And Yager will be traded. There's no question about that. And he's made it very clear he wants to go to an Eastern contender. So I think Montreal and Washington and the Rangers and Islanders are teams that are all going to be interested. But I'll throw the Penguins in that mix too. They're certainly going to talk with Lou Lamoriello, I think, before any deal for Yager is made.
Would Yager be almost problematic, not because of his personality or anything like that, but just because you're trying to find a way to fit this really big piece into a team that's already, we don't want to say that top six is in any way set or anything like that, but there are so many roles that are already defined, and Yager, I just don't know. I'm not sure that's I don't want to repeat of Iginla. Not that Iginla was used the correct way here to begin with, but
if you get Yager, he needs to be more of a specialist at this point. Would I have him on the first power play? Absolutely, I would, because that's the one thing he still does really well. If Crosby and Malkin don't like it, too bad. Find a way to make it work. He's one of the greatest power play players in history. He's a guy you want to play 12 to 14 minutes a night. You don't want him out there a ton. But and listen, they're not in a situation where they could give up a whole lot to get him. So that's why I don't think they'll get him, because there are teams out there that just have more assets and more salary room. So it'll be easier for them than it would be the Penguins. But he's on their list. He's a guy that they have, I would say, limited interest in.
I'd like to see the Consol Energy engineers construct a third half wall for the Penguins' attacking zone so that they can operate the power play with Yager, Crosby, and Malkin.
Not the worst idea, actually. I think they would all appreciate that, in fact.
And the very last thing I want to touch on is just the fact that we talked about the power play, but the penalty kill. Something we're starting to see Mike Johnston and the team experiment with is getting Crosby out there more on the penalty kill and seeing, especially whenever you're starting to kind of rotate guys who are able to sit out of the lineup because the Penguins have that extra forward. So when Craig Adams sits, all of a sudden there's 30 seconds of penalty kill time that Crosby is playing, and I really like that look. And it sounds like we're going to start to see that not just with Crosby, but possibly Malkin in the future here as well.
Yeah, I think in both kill penalties. And Malkin was good enough to kill penalties for Team Russia in the Olympics when he was 18, so it's not like he can't. Crosby certainly can. I would love to see Sid be a little more aggressive when he kills penalties. He's actually a pretty good penalty killer, but he really doesn't force the issue and try to score when he's shorthanded. I'd love to see him do that a little more. And not so much cheat, but to use his speed to create some offense. I think he could turn that into a real weapon, quite frankly. And I like the idea of them doing that with Crosby and Malkin. The penalty kill has been very good most of the season. Not so great the last month. Maybe a little bit of a concern, but only a little bit. I think the penalty killing structure on this team is very good. And every penalty kill has a little bump in the road here and there. That happens. But I think it's one of the strengths of the team. And, hey, if Crosby wants to bang in a shorthanded goal here or there in the playoffs, I don't think anybody would complain.
It's a threat that the Penguins really haven't had somebody who can consistently go and do that since Jordan Staal. And Staal did it with his strength and with his size. Max Talbot even was a good penalty killer who could put the puck in the net from time to time. But I see Crosby sort of, his style would be like a Michael Grabner. And like you said, that speed. I mean, he can burn a defenseman playing the point or a forward playing the point or anything like that. I think, all it takes is one broken up pass and all of a sudden you have 87 one-on-one. I like our chances.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. And I think it's something you're going to see more of. I really do. And, yeah, if you're a defenseman earning the point, just knowing he's out there. It was the same way with Mario back in the day. Just knowing he was out there kind of changes the way you handle your power play because there's always that threat in the back of your mind. And no, Crosby has a good feel for the penalty kill. I think he always has. I like him out there. You don't want him blocking shots left and right, obviously. That's always a concern. But, no, to get him out there in the last 30 minutes of a penalty, I actually like it a lot.
And I thought this past weekend, and even in the past couple of weeks, some things that we've been seeing the Penguins do really well. Actually, against Washington, I was really happy with it. Washington was getting lots of first chances and nothing on the second chance. So the Penguins have been doing a good job about that, and that is something that last year's team was terrible about. It was second, third, fourth chances in a lot of cases.
Yes.
And, I mean, how much can you ask of your goaltender, whether it's Marc-Andre Fleury, Patrick Roy, Terry Sawchuk? Who cares? You have that many shots on goal, and they're all rebounds.
Well, that's right. And listen, the defensemen are just playing better this year. Dupre and Scuderi, they've both been pretty good this year for the most part. Scuderi's been a lot better. He's been good on the penalty kill. I know a lot of people are not Scuderi fans, but he's been way better this season. And when he's on the 5-on-3 penalty kill, he's just so good. And you're right, the play in front of the Penguins net in general has been much better. It's just a better defensive team than we've seen here in, I think, a really long time. And you want the offense to come around. Maybe they've given up some offense, because they need to become a better defensive team. And, hey, for years people have said the Penguins don't play playoff-style hockey enough. They're just playing pond hockey too much. Well, they're not really playing pond hockey anymore. Maybe this is how they need to play in the playoffs, and we'll see. Like I said, I don't have a feel for this team. Could they make a run? Absolutely they could, but it's just a different style team than we've seen in a while.
All right, Josh. Well, thanks for joining us, as always, and we'll have to have you on next week to break down the Yuri Toulouse, Jordan Staal, Brandon Sutter, and Nick Spaulding deal.
Yeah, they would take that one.
I'm sure.
But, yes, I would be delighted to come talk some trade deadline hockey anytime.
All right, Josh. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Thanks again to Josh Yohe for joining us, and thanks to you for listening to us. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. Leave a rating, leave a review. It helps us make this show better for you in the process. Check out thepensnation.com. We've got Misha's Thoughts, game recaps, Joe Guzzi, Jim Meineke, Annie Sheen, Melissa Essing, Andy Hughes, Nick Richter, all holding it down at thepensnation.com with some great writing that will keep you going through the trade deadline. You've been listening to the Pens Nation Radio Show on thepensnation.com.